Thank you for all who are coming in. We're just gonna wait for like another minute before we get started. Okay.
Okay. All right. Uh, Hello, everyone. Good morning and good evening. Uh, Good morning and good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Christian Brown and I'm an intern with the U.S. Campaign for Burma. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to our event, Burma's Breaking Point, Exploitation in Mon State. This installation of our series brings together regional experts to dissect the following brutal realities: armed conflict and economic predation that are converging to crush civilian life. Mon State has devolved into a gauntlet of extortion rackets, forced conscription, and endless flight, with junta forces and armed groups weaponizing checkpoints, roads, and ports to extract payments for bare survival, tightly constricting movement, work, or even respite from violence. Our panel will also discuss urgent pathways for international support and accountability to protect Mon State's communities and advance justice across Burma's deepening crisis. Um, so before we get started with introducing today's speakers, just some housekeeping notes. Please, if you have any questions for the Q&A, type your questions into the Q&A box. Please add the names of the speakers you want to direct your questions to. One of our colleagues will be collecting the questions for the Q&A. Thank you. So, without any further ado, I would now like to introduce today's speakers. And we are grateful to have these speakers here with us today to discuss the escalating exploitation in Mon State. Our panelists are, first of all, Mon Saing. Mon Saing founded the Human Rights Foundation of MonLand in 1995 and currently serves as Herform's executive director. Under her form, he leads the human rights documentation as well as advocates on land and investment issues affecting ethnic groups in southern Burma. He also founded the independent Mon News Agency. After the military coup in 2021, he became involved in the anti-military dictatorship movement and participated in the founding of the Mon State Federal Council as a federal unit for the future establishment of a federal democratic Burma. He is currently a council member of MSFC, fighting for the rights of people in Mon State. And next, we have Dr. Ah Chan. Dr. Ah Chan has a PhD in gender and labor economics with over 15 years of experience across NGOs, the United Nations, and social enterprises. She currently serves as Deputy Minister in the Ministry of Social, Labor, and Humanitarian Affairs in the National Unity Government of Myanmar, also known as NUG, and also as a former Foreign Affairs Advisor to the Mon State Federal Council, MSFC. Committed to equality and inclusion, she champions employment, labor rights, and the protection of women and children, and advocates practical solutions for marginalized communities. And lastly, we have Maggi Quadrini. Maggi Quadrini has a decade of experience working on human rights in Burma. Her work focuses on issues affecting women, refugees, internally displaced people, and children. Maggie has written about her work and observations in outlets such as The Diplomat, Southeast Asia Globe, New Narrative, and Tea Circle Oxford, where she offers a grassroots perspective on regional human rights issues. She has worked with local organizations, including the Shan Women's Action Network, the Karen Women's Organization, the Women's Organization of Burma, the Human Rights Foundation of MonLand, and others.
Thank you so much, Christian. I am Karen Ames. I am the Managing Director of U.S. Campaign for Burma, and I will be the moderator today for today's discussion. So let's get started. We'll start with you, Saing. So you have decades of human rights documentation in Mon State. It gives you a unique vantage point, and your role as Mon State Federal Council member adds a political dimension to that perspective. With that in mind, how would you describe what people around today, specifically, how are the junta operations shaping daily life, threatening livelihoods, and eroding people's sense of safety and security? Can you describe the types of policies and programs that MSFC is implementing to offset junta operations?
Yes, thanks very much to Currents and all participants in this event. So I'm glad to express about the situation, updated situation about the MonLand or Mon State, southern Burma. So it is a long and thinning territory along the sea coast in southern Burma or Myanmar. So we Mon people, we have over 2 million or 2.5 million people in southern Mon State. So we are indigenous or inhabitants for thousand years in these regions. So, however, currently we have been struggling for the rights of self-determination in our Mon State and also participate in the establishment of Federal Democratic Unions of Burma or Myanmar in the future. So I'm representing a Mon State Federal Unit, and then so we are now in the movement along with the NUCC, National Unity Consolidated Council, and also National Unity Governments. So the situation in Mon State, as you know, that not so very different from another state, but our territory is very narrow. So we are most of our area or our territory are controlled by the Myanmar military or the juntas. So saying military coup. So after the military coup, the situation suddenly changed that there has been more atrocity and mistreatment by the military juntas against our civilians in Mon State, like many other parts of the countries. So the conflict escalated in northern Mon State, especially in the Tong district area, and in southern Mon State in Ye Township area, Ye district area, and sometimes the fighting also happened in the middle parts of Mon State in Chai Miao Township. So whenever the fighting happened between the military juntas and the revolutionary force, the civilians are always targeted by the junta, military junta, rather than again the ERO and PDF force active in the regions. So we have been similarly suffered by killings and injuries by straw and mortar shell in almost every week. So we have information from another Mon State or southern Mon State. So the military is suddenly putting them, and so we since 2021, so we have faced a lot of population displacement in we know that in 2025 we have over 40,000 displaced population in Mon State alone. So on the other hand, so Saing, the revolutionary group, surrounded the military junta base in many areas. So they are shooting with the mortar, and then they planted the landmine. So around the area and in the main route where they believe the revolutionary forces are coming. However, that landmine also hit to the local people, not really to the our PDF force or revolutionary force in the area. So therefore, it's made a lot of movement restriction against the local people, local farmer or plantation owner or so the gardeners. So in this situation, many of them are hit by their livelihood. So livelihoods for their growing and vegetable growing their plant and harvesting their crops in many places. And then for the IDP or displaced person, they are mostly suffer always security threat and also mental health in many areas. So there are lots of IDP living in temporary shelter, so where they cannot go back home for many months because whenever they go back home, their villages are always hit by the militia. So the people are fleeing on that situation. So the role of Mon State Federal Council is we have to take care of the people in the whole Mon State. So we have 10 townships, about 7 townships are under the conflict and in the conflict zone. Only Molamiyai, Mudong and Paong township are out of the conflict zone, but in other area in the conflict zone. The first we have provide civilian protection in the area, provide security for the IDP and local people in the area. So whenever the military advance come into our area. So secondly, we are providing security for travelers and traveler who use the main road because our revolutionary force we are control most of the main road in the area. So we are providing security, and then and we also providing setting one system to the local people that whenever the military column military junta advance, so they have to escape. And then we also train our soldier, our revolutionary soldier, with equip them with international humanitarian law and how to behave to the local people and how to advise the fighting that suffer to the local people and how to manage themselves, not to make big damage to the local people. So this is in terms of protection issue. In terms of public service, you see that we are also providing a lot of humanitarian aid, especially food. Sometimes we have to do cash transfer in some areas because um, we ourselves we cannot buy food, a lot of amounts of food because of the junta checkpoints on the halfway and they can confiscate it. And we are providing non-item food like non-food items, especially for sheltering. And we also set up in the hospital and clinic in both northern Mon State and southern Mon State to take care of displaced person. And then we also provide our doctors, especially CDM doctors, also providing for the maternal and child health care to the local people and displaced person. And we also set up some education program in some area, especially in northern Mon State where the children are displaced. So we are not only human rights documentation, but also we are providing a lot of assistance to the people who are really need in this situation. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for sharing the ground situation and all the efforts that is being done on the ground. It really highlights what local actors are doing on the ground to support those impacted populations and really reinforces that need for cross-border aid. That call is really important to the international community, and just highlighting what you all have been doing really reinforces that call. So let's I want to dive a bit deeper into the ground situation. So in what ways has the protracted armed conflict in Mon State reshaped and fractured women's lives at multiple levels, such as their mental health and sense of self? What if their access to healthcare, education, and livelihoods, what does that look like? And as well as their mental health, mobility, voice in the community, decision making. How are these pressures affecting different groups of women over time? Can you expand on the mental and psychological impacts of the shifts in women's roles and burdens? And what do they need most at this point?
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. As you know, in Myanmar, so like healthcare system, education system, and economic system all are collapsing right now. It's not just in one state; it's also the whole country. So when we talk about the impact of protracted conflict in one state, it is not just about immediate hardship. So it is about the gradual reshaping of women's lives at every level. Many women are living with the constant uncertainty, the fear of violence and displacement. Does not come and go. It is stay with them. So this over time, this deeply affect mental health and how women see themselves. So many one identifying as a student or workers are now see themselves as a primary, as a survivor and caregivers. So at the same time, so women are taking on great responsibility as an income earner and head of the household. So often without great support or decision-making power. So that imbalance creating the significant psychological strain, as access into the healthcare is very difficult for the women right now, and education for their children and livelihood, and also the having a lot of a problem. They cannot even do business because of, as the Rehmonnya sign create, that there is a lot of insecure and fighting everywhere and cannot be safe traveling. This increased the women and migrated to Thailand to support their family. So when they get to the Thailand, not just they face another hardship, they exposing them to extra exploitation and separation. And this creates a lot of emotional stress for women. But in the Mon society, emotional stress doesn't count at the mental health. We don't see at the mental health is a problem. So to answer your question, what women need most is very clear, access to healthcare and stable livelihoods and protection from violence and recognition as a decision maker. Even though they have done a lot for the society, for the family, but they are not one decision maker. No one recognizes them and no one has acknowledged what they have done. So without this restoring women's safety and dignity and agency, our sustainable never recover. It's not possible in Mon State and in Myanmar. So that's what I want to all the society or all the help from the international and to provide the healthcare to the federal unit. Every federal unit, they are facing the hardship because of the funding cut from the international support. So healthcare is very important for the women and currently, and then the education for their children. Education is another part as important to give the mother struggling to find a better education for their children. This is put a lot of pressure for them to. This is next generation for their family to hand over. If they don't have a good education system, is create more inequality in the society, especially for young girls. This why I think is we can do better as the international organization to support healthcare and education for their children and small livelihood life, to for survivor. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anchan, for really highlighting this vulnerable population. I think that's something that needs to be brought up a lot in discussion, especially as women are shouldering more of the burden with these shifts within the home and in the public sphere, while at the same time taking away their agency. So it does really make it difficult for them to navigate. With that in mind, I'd like to now turn to you, Maggie. So we've heard from Rehmonnya Saing and Dr. Anchan about the ground situation in Mon State. In what ways do the impacts you are seeing on the ground in Mon State, such as security, livelihoods, displacement, social cohesion, and mental health, how do they both mirror and diverge from those in other heavily affected areas like Karen, Chen, or Sagaing? How do these similarities and differences reveal communities' resilience, and long-term prospects across the country?
Thank you, Karen, and thank you to my fellow panelists. It is an honor to share the conversation with you both tonight. I will draw upon what has already been said on behalf of Human Rights Foundation of MonLand. Given the analysis and the realities that have already been painted, that is clear that there are several comparisons when we're looking across the country, particularly in the Southeast. So here forms target areas. We are active in Mon State as well as Karen State and the Tanantari region. So some of the figures I'll pull from today are going to be from across our target areas as well as Mon specifically. I think what's really important to sort of contextualize the question is just following the last two panelists' comments. The situation that's unraveling on the ground is anything far from normal. We've seen the hunt to evade accountability for decades in Burma. And since the coup, this impunity that they have benefited from has allowed them to continue to commit human rights violations on a massive scale. They have intensified armed conflict in nearly all the states and regions across the country, and they have turned civilian life into one of fear, surveillance, and control. This is a regime that is so desperate for international recognition that they staged an election that was very much a sham, that was widely rejected by the people. But in this push to convince and fool global stakeholders, including ASEAN, that the situation is normal, they're bombing civilians on the ground with weapons supplied by neighboring countries, as well as fellow authoritarian regimes. This is a regime that is separating families daily, either through the forced conscription or arbitrary arrest and forced disappearances. They are turning civilians into expendable bodies on the front lines. This is also being done through quartering, forcing civilians to be human shields. As stated by my fellow panelists, because of these circumstances, pathways to education, health, and livelihood have been completely eroded. Like I said, this is a military that does not think twice about carrying out an airstrike on an IDP camp or a refugee camp. It does not think twice before bombing a school or a clinic where the majority of those displaced in the country are women and children, who are therefore the majority of the casualties. This military is not working in any space, adhering to any kind of democratic norm, with the domestic rule of law being completely upended immediately after the coup. In February alone, just to give some data to support what's happening in Huaform's target areas. So again, this is Mon State, as well as Karen State and the Tanantari region. We have documented 247 civilians who were killed or injured by airstrikes. This is in February of this year alone. This includes 10 townships in Mon State, 5 in Karen State, and 6 in the Tanantari region. Over a 6-month period, we also documented that nearly 4,000 homes were burned down and more than 300 villagers were displaced during the sham election and post-election period. This was largely due to a lot of extortion that was happening in villages where military-backed police and security forces would come into villages and threaten them to vote accordingly. These circumstances have caused widespread despair and anxiety in local areas. Communities are struggling to find enough food, safe shelter, medical care. Children are not able to go to school. There are virtually no safe learning pathways. Elderly people are having to go without children, having to move at a pace where they are older. And women and girls, as mentioned previously, are facing growing risks of violence and exploitation. In Mon State, this impact extends to people having to flee their homes under duress. We know that through documentation across various civil society groups, when there is an attack that's taking place in a village, it often happens when there is no conflict happening prior to. These attacks are indiscriminate and they're targeted. And when civilians see or hear an attack coming, they have seconds to get their belongings together and flee. Survival is very much at the forefront of people's day-to-day life. Loved ones are trying to leave, they're trying to reach safety and survival being the ultimate priority. So this is what we're seeing very much across Mon State, these campaigns of violence against the junta to assert dominance and control over communities who want to live in peace. They want nothing to do with the fighting, with the war. They're also facing increased risk as a result of this. In Reform's documentation, we receive cases daily of civilians who are driving through a checkpoint and are apprehended, killed, never seen again. As was also mentioned, landmines are a massive concern. CareForn has documented at least 41 civilians killed or injured in landmine explosions, again, throughout our target areas, just in January and February of this year alone. Forced conscription is also something that we're seeing in Mon State, but also throughout much of the country. The junta is forcing young men and women to fight a battle that they are very much losing, and they're doing it through extremely exploitative and extractive means. Because of the violent threat that conscription poses and the reality that many young people don't want to do it, they want nothing to do with this war. We've estimated that 435,000 young people have left or crossed borders in search of safety. Again, this poses much higher risk for women and girls who are much more likely to be trafficked or sexually exploited. The recent funding cuts from USAID and other donors globally have made the circumstances on the ground so much more challenging because despite these gaps, it was local organizations who have been at the forefront of filling protection gaps, delivering humanitarian aid. So this is a new reality that civil society is having to navigate given all the emerging complexities that are always sort of evolving. However, I would also say that given all of the challenges and the turmoil that exists on the ground, there's also very much still a spirit of resistance on the ground. People do not want to be victims in the narrative, especially young people, especially the young generation. There's so much agency, and we see it in Reform's documentation as well. We have a monthly report, and part of our monthly reporting is we want to highlight that. So we document the protests that take place every month. We've done that since the attempted coup. And in the time that has passed since then, we have never had a month go by where there have been zero protests. So these campaigns are taking place in creative ways. A lot of them are digital. Some of them take place in the form of silent strikes. So again, in the junta's bid to present a situation of normalcy during a holiday, a new year, they will fill the streets, but local people will not participate. They will close their shops. You will not see them out celebrating. So this is, again, a subtle form of resistance that is being shown by the people. So I think, just despite the hardship, which very much is active and real and requires urgent attention, I would also like to stress that civilians in Burma are not passive and they're not waiting to be saved. They are agents of change in their own communities, like my fellow panelists working in federal and term governments and at the NUG and NUCC, as well as at the local level. So any meaningful engagement on Burma needs to, for sure, understand the context, which is complicated, but also ensure that local people are at the forefront and that they're being supported with the right resources, funding, and technical expertise if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. I definitely agree with, bringing in those local stakeholders. You're doing so much on the ground already, and they have that knowledge, they have that expertise. So when it comes to someone coming in to this box not knowing or knowing very little, they need that information in order to, in order to support, those impacted and to support those local stakeholders. So now that we have, before I get into our second round, to our audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to input into the Q&A box. You find that located at the bottom of the screen. You can put it in anonymously, or you can put it, please feel free to use question. If you have a question, please include their name. Thank you. So let's move on to our second round of questions. So we have that sense of the ground situation, but I want to dive a bit deeper into some of the intertwining themes that are affecting civilians in Mon State. And these are exploitation, extortion, and forced conscription. And each of you have touched on it very briefly in the first round of questions. So civilians in Mon State are caught in these overlapping systems. And the junta regime exploits civilians at transport routes, coastal hubs. Naiman Saing, can you share how the junta uses the terror of extortion to its own benefit? How do these systems strip civilians of their income, their agency, and movement? What are the impacts on their economic survival, physical safety, and psychological well-being? Additionally, how is the forced conscription woven into the regime's scheme of control and exploitation? And what are the repercussions for civilians who cannot afford to avoid these very systems?
Yes, thank you again. So the problem forced conscription, and it started in 2024. So the problem started seeing them. So that is very systematically arranged by the military juntas in order to take not only human but also money from the local people, or extortion from the people. So the forced conscription and extortion is totally related issue for human resource and money resource for the regime. So since April 2024 until now, I think over 3,000 young men and women are conscripted in Mon State alone in 10 townships. In order to advise the forced conscription, you have to pay. You have to pay to the local authority, local military commander through the village headman, you see. So the training is, so they have quotas that the local military battalion will send letter to the village headman. So how many people they need for this village, for example. So then if the village headman said, okay, we cannot send these people, and then they said, okay, if you cannot send the people, you can pay us. We will find the people. So they will hire the people on behalf of the village, for example. So every house in Mon village, so they have to pay 5,000 kyat to 10,000 kyat per month in order to advise the conscription for the safety of their son and daughters. So therefore, you see, in most Mon village, we have about at least 200 households, up to 2,000 or 3,000 households. We have some Mon village like small town, you see. So that's it. How we see income machine, money making machine for the military juntas. They get a lot of extortion, money from this village because the Mon, they don't, most of the Mon people, they don't want to join to the army to be trainees. So instead, they provide the money to the local authority. But we are not sure whether the local authority, they they hire another people to place or not. But most of the money are taken them and they share among the battalions and the Southeast Command. So there is it's a main income for them, and also the military, the people in the military. So the impact is so big. So, and secondly, many young men and women who want to escape from even though you pay them, you are not sure you are free. Because if you are traveling to the town, they just grab you on the checkpoint and they just send to the military training school, right? So even in your village, your parents pay money for you, but however, you are not safe when you are traveling outside of your village. So you can be arrested and grabbed and sent into the military. So therefore, the parent, they have to decide to send their children to get out from the village and to go to Thailand, migrate into Thailand, neighboring country, or maybe to come into we say revolutionary liberated area or something like that. But many of them decide don't come to revolutionary control area because we also have many problems. You see, because of the conflict, and then many decide to go into Thailand. Thailand or Malaysia, in that situation, they are also suffered by the human trafficking again. By the traffickers and by the several agents who are working for sending them high because they cannot make passport in Yangon or in Yangon because if they travel in Yangon they can be arrested and then they can send. So therefore they have no choice and they have to go through the border illegally, and then they have to contact the trafficker in the border area in order to send them to Bangkok or nearby to their friend or relative in Thailand, right? But almost illegal. So in this situation, they are arrested by Thai police or Thai army, even though they pay the agent, for example, 20,000 baht, not just 20,000 baht, about 750 US dollar up to 1,000 US dollar to the agent. Even that situation, they can be arrested by the police and on the halfway. So therefore, in this situation, it's very difficult. We saw in the news or in the media reported by independent news agency almost every day, young people from Mon State, Korean State, then they are arrested in the border area. So then they are trafficked, and then after they deport and send again. So in this situation, MSFC role is very little. So we set up some safe house and we inform them to the house and go to the safe house. But another issue is some young men are also sent to the young men and women are trafficked into the scam center, scam center based on the Thai-Myanmar border, Thai-Burma border. So in that scam center, so they are used to be like different ways. So you use different ways. So therefore, for MSFC, we have not so many choice. So we have informed we have safe house in the border areas. When you have a problem, you can come. And we also protect women and children. So we also women and children protection program. So when you have problem in the scam center or you have the sexual harassment or whatever, we're trying to follow and we're trying to find justice for them. And then we also educate our soldier or revolutionary force. Do not contact, do not walk in the scam center because it's an international crime. So we educate them and we also educate young people in our areas that please don't join to the scam center. Even you have difficulty, you can find other ways. Scam center is like making international crime, and so it's not appropriate. So something we are providing in educating to the local people here, the local younger. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think you really put into a picture of like the starting of exploitation in Mon State, but it's a continuation. This cycle of exploitation then goes beyond, even when they cross into Thailand, where they think they'll have safety or where they're seeking safety. But with the role of human traffickers, they're just caught up again, just in another. And then, of course, with the rise of scam centers and how individuals are being exploited or lured into these compounds and just exploited further, I think it really gives our audience an idea of this cycle of exploitation. It may start in Mon State, but there's a continuation. And it is great to hear that, MSFC is responding to this. But again, like there's a lot, many individuals who are being affected. I think Maggie even had mentioned 400,000 that are crossing the border, that have crossed the border. So this is a lot that is happening on the ground. So I'd like to turn to you, Dr. Antan. Rehmonnya saying he discussed these overlapping systems that's affecting the Hmong people. I'd like to see if you can go a step further, go a step further and step how these various systems disproportionately compound risks and burdens for vulnerable groups, especially for women, displaced family and youth, through immediate threats to physical safety, gender-based violence, food insecurity, child labor, and also via deeper shifts in economic agency, intra-family dynamics, mental health, long-term community roles. In what ways do these pressures intersect with pre-existing gender norms to reveal the broader weaponization of economic survival and social cohesion in the conflict? And how does this reshape the power and burden within that home? Additionally, how does gender-based violence become an instrument for economic control? We've seen it a lot within armed conflict. So how does this look like within regards to economic control? And with this in mind, can you expand on the long-term impacts on women in Mon State?
Yeah, so thank you. This, as Rehmonnya explained it to you already, these are not isolated abuse for women, They are part of the system that reshape the women survivor and place greater burden on women and displacing their family. As you know, fighting again everywhere, so they have to move with the family. And mostly men, if they join the revolution, so it's only women and remain in the country because they have to take care of their own mother and their children. And this is also push the young people as well because of the conscription, and they have to leave the country. If they don't leave the country, they have to capture the military holder to be placed in the army. So all of this is happening, is putting a lot of pressure for the women. It's not just the economic the economic hardship is also their life, They are expected to sustain a household under the pressure, often at the cost of their own safety, And even though they are migrated to Thailand to support their family, but they cannot come alone. Sometimes they cannot leave their children with their mother anymore because of the conscription. So they have to bring their children with them in Thailand. And some of them, the children need a school. The cost, the earning in Thailand is not much for the migrant worker. They can earn only 12,000 baht. But to separate that, they also have to support their mother at home, and they also have to support their children and school at the migrant children or Thai school. But as you can see, that this is not enough for the basic food for the family, even in Thailand. And this can impact a lot of burden in the Thai healthcare system as well. So on top of that, they are not safe, and they have to face the exploitation, then separated from their children, children living in one place, and then their own mother living in one place. They have to separate all the family member. So on top of gender-based violence is closely tied to this pressure. It is used to control resources and decision and mobility, both inside and outside the home. At the same time, women take on greater responsibility without great power. Sometimes they have no, as I mentioned before, they have no right to make decision and in any level. This create deep imbalance that reshape a family dynamic and increase long-term strain for women and put a lot of pressure on them. And even the mental health is not count, and they don't have time to take care of themselves. They don't have time. Sometimes they cannot even rest. They have to go to work and come home, as they have to cook for the family. They have to worry about their children and separately. So the result is not only economic hardship, it lasting erosion of well-being, autonomy, and opportunity for women. And if the affected the women, it's going to affect the community in Mon State or in everywhere. If the women is not well-being, and their children cannot be well-being as well, they're not well as well. So for the long run in the country is we cannot imagine what can be Burma look like in the next 10 years because of the corruption of the economics and corruption of the healthcare system, corruption of the education system. So we cannot even imagine, That's why the federal unit is there and all the resistance is there, CSO is working there and try their best to help these women. The military junta, they come in the area, they just bombing and they just fighting and killing people, and they don't care about people. They don't care about women. They don't care about child education. They don't care about health system. I want the international community to see, I know that a lot of the UN, they're based in Rangoon, but do they get outside of the Rangoon and trying to see the local place where they can see, a lot of the ITP area and healthcare system, and then the vaccination for the children, they cannot get this access, It's a big, huge the impact in the future of Myanmar. So I don't know, I have no words, to explain and to express how can I help. For us, is we have a limited resource, Mon State Federal Council, we have limited resource and limited people to cover the whole Mon State. And we are working the volunteering, we don't get paid, but we know that this is for our country, for the future of our country. But even though we don't get paid, we keep working and moving. So this is what I want international to see, that, we get only a small support and we have to do a lot more than that. And the people need is more, it's not just because they want to depend on other people, because there is no way for them to survive and to find a job. Even their home, they want to be home with the family, but they cannot do it because of the burden of the economically and healthcare for their children, education for their children. They have to leave area and to place another area, and they have to face another problem, So this is not just in Mon State, it's everywhere in Myanmar. So I want the international community to come and look in the area that is not the military territory, the federal unit. And if you want to know, you should come and see what is the life of the people look like and the life of the women look like in this area. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Atan. I think you bring up a really important point, that those in the international community, whether they be leaders or those working for larger international agencies, they really need to, work with those on that need for information to understand what's happening within those communities, how they are impacted. They have to step outside of their safety zone of what those offices look like and go on the ground, meet with the people, meet with the local stakeholders. I mean, we mentioned it earlier in this conversation that the stakeholders, CSOs, MSFC, even like with Quadrini, they have the IEC. They're doing so much on the ground and supporting the people. And all that time and effort because they're your communities. So for the international community to have a better understanding, they have to work with you. They have to, meet with you, talk with you, get that information in order to better support you and the communities you serve. So thank you for really highlighting that. And our other panelists too that have brought this up in their talking points as well. So I'd like to turn to you, Maggie. So after hearing from Dr. Achan about the impacts of Mon State, how do the patterns of exploitation and extortion targeting women look? How does that look like in other states? We've heard about the scam compound in states, other active armed conflicts in other states such as Gimchin, large swaths of displacement in Sagaing and Chin. Can you compare to the experiences of Mon women in terms of physical risks, economic burdens, gender-based violence, and shifts in the community roles? And what do the similarities suggest about tailored resilience or advocacy strategies for women across Burma's diverse conflict zones? I know you touched on this a little bit prior, but if you can go a little bit deeper.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you also to Dr. Achan. I feel like she really contextualized the situation and how women and girls are responding to the many challenges on the ground. So the weight of the crisis, as we have all sort of discussed, this displacement crisis that has been fueled by the military junta and getting worse since the attempted coup, has displaced at least 76,000 women in Mon State over the last 5 years. At least 466 women have been arrested, averaging at least 2 women a week. So these figures present a rather grim reality in the sense that women are being targeted in their homes, in their communities, in their various roles that they hold. Pureform has a quarterly series. It's called Voice Up. We release it 4 times a year, and it examines the gendered situation on the ground. We try in this series to highlight the human rights violations against women, but also their agency. We also try and highlight the fact that this is a military in its cowardice targets the most vulnerable. It targets people without guns, without any form of protection, women and children. As Dr. Anchan also mentioned, men for sure face risks in the current situation in Burma. But women and girls are not only having to deal with this risk that runs through their communities and their homes, but they're also, like Dr. Anchan said, having to completely switch roles in a constant manner. So they almost being deprived that time to heal, to readjust to the current situation on the ground. They're fulfilling multiple roles and they're transcending traditional gender norms. I would also say in the way that they are this caretaker in their communities, in their homes, they're also continuing to seek out livelihood pathways despite how limited they may be. This could include selling snack or some sort of product in a local market, vegetables. So even though they exist in a culture that very much seeks to deny and dismiss any leadership pathway. We're also seeing once again through the emergence of these local governance structures like the IEC, as you mentioned, Karen, and then in secretariat roles or in leadership roles. So I think this has to say a lot about the future of a new Burma, where federalism for sure is at the forefront of talks, but so is gender equality. And I think women have been very vocal, ethnic women in particular, at saying, yes, we want federalism and we want gender equality, not after, but at the same time. This is a revolution that simultaneously has to move forward with gender equality and principles at the forefront to ensure that it is a new Burma that is inclusive of all gender, socioeconomic status, etc. I would also say a major gap that we're sort of seeing, not just in Mon State, but comparatively across the country where there are IDP camps and temporary shelters, is that women are being denied privacy rights. They're in close quarters with men being the majority of the leadership in the camps. Their needs are constantly overlooked. There's also a significant lack of consultation of women's voices. Despite women saying that they need more privacy, they need bathrooms where men cannot come in and out. They need that for themselves and also for their children. Because women are not in a majority of a leadership role in these IDP camps, the roles are dismissed, which is unfortunate because, again, women's voices are so critical to shaping how structures can change and how systems can evolve to support everyone in society. A woman doesn't just think about herself, a woman thinks about the greater community. And with these gaps being filled by local women's organizations, they are not coming in and saying, we're just here for the women and children. They're there for the community. They're there to provide access to services that support a greater future, a greater good. I know forced conscription has also been talked about. Just like to briefly sort of touch on how this impacts women and girls, specifically because the junta, again, in this narrative to fool the international community, have said, we're not going to enlist women, we're just focusing on the men. Not that that makes it any better, but this is again another lie that they are trying to push. Hureform has reported that pregnant women and mothers are being forced to enlist. Women in MonLand in particular in the capital have expressed deep fear and uncertainty as reports of women being targeted for conscription have circulated. One local woman told Hureform that the junta had been trying for years to recruit women. And again, this contributes to this group of people that are fleeing to the border, which is not safe, which is not sustainable. For women, it puts them at a greater risk. In 2025, based on Hureform's access in our data, we estimate that 20 to 25 women have been conscripted. This has also been mentioned. Some families have been freed by paying excessive bribes. These are families who've been extorted, who have given everything to get their daughters back and not have to go into the front lines. I would also add that communication gaps have been really challenging with the junta weaponizing the rule of law and increasing surveillance. It's becoming increasingly difficult for women human rights defenders on the ground to do their work with all of the digital surveillance and tools that are being brought in from, again, fellow authoritarian regimes like China. In 2025, Hureform recorded 127 men and 59 women who were arrested for their online activities, most of which is tied to either activism or even just posting something on Facebook that is critical of the regime. And again, when denied access to communication, this is a pathway that women might use to seek help if they're in an abusive situationship or their security is at risk. I just want to reference one last thing, and that is a worrying trend that Hureform has seen emerge in the last year as it relates to women and girls. And that is that in two cases that we have documented, the victims had close the perpetrators had close relationships to various positions of authority. So one young woman who was brutally raped and killed by a man, he had a connection to one of the village ward administrators who helped discard the body. In another case, a village administrator was taken into custody by a junta-backed militia and was tortured to death. The regime had claimed it was a suicide. And again, in both of these cases, because the perpetrator was linked to some sort of security force that was backed by the junta, there was no accountability. And the violence and the brutality in both of these cases is extremely alarming because the junta is, again, trying to evoke fear into these communities that says to women, if you speak out, if you try and push any kind of agenda, there's going to be a violent response, which in tandem relates to there just being less cases of violence being reported, increasing taboo and making it much more challenging to have a response on the ground. So these types of attacks, they permeate fear, and they also contribute to the injustice practices that women on the ground are facing. And again, just to echo the last few points, like there is so much resilience on the ground. There is so much attention that needs to be drawn to responding to these cases in a dignified way, support survivors, that is trauma informed. And women-led organizations are at the forefront. They know how to deal with these situations, and they need to be supported. As was mentioned, Rangoon is such a bubble. If you're not leaving Yangon, you're not going to see what's happening on the ground. You're not going to be made aware of these challenges. And worse, you're not going to be informed on how to help mitigate them and help local communities. So there needs to definitely be a much more informed response, and that needs to be rooted in local principles.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you to all our panelists. I think you've really highlighted some really important points. Each of you all have, seems that there's a general consensus agreement that, more needs to be done from the international community, but they also need to be better informed, and they need to really communicate and work with you all on addressing those issues. We are at the top of the hour, so I do want to go really quick to our Q&A, which we do have one question from Queso, and this is on the scam centers. And she does say that, or respond to this question is fine. Her question is, Burma's military junta is benefiting from the expansion of scam centers linked to actors from China operating in Burma. Evidence suggests that the junta and its affiliated networks are providing security and enabling conditions that allow these operations to function with a total impunity. These scam networks are transnational, targeting individuals globally with a significant impact on victims in the United States, here in Virginia also. I am particularly interested in understanding the scale and concentration of these operations in Mon State and surrounding areas. Additionally, what forms of international support to MSFC would be most effective in countering this threat? What kind of support and cooperation with MSFC would be helpful in countering and combating these scam centers in Mon areas? Okay, so who would like to respond to the question? Mon
I
Saing?
will respond a bit, and then Dr. Achan can fill up. So the impacts of scam center, as I already informed that now, because of action taken by the Chinese government and Thai government, or plus U.S. government, so the scam center is shipping place. They shipping from one place to another. So, however, they are more inside. You see, recently they are at the border, in the borderline, but now they are shipping more inside, and they spread out in many places. So actually, the scam center are still there in somewhere. And they, even though Thai government cut internet or other thing and electricity, but they are still operating with their own way. So even though Starlink are cut by the Elon Musk in some area, but they still trying to operate something, because for many years that is the military junta have totally have benefits from these scan center, and then they how we say they are permitted, especially border guard force uh, along the border area to do their own business and to have their own income. So therefore, and then they also allow Chinese migrant or Chinese not migrant. They are rich people. They are the people who have a lot of money. They come into Mon State and Grand State, and they buy the land, and they build a building. They have building under the name of Borogas Force, and then they do everything with Chinese money. And then after that, they do scam center, operate scam center, trying to take money from billions of US dollar from many countries around the world. So recent suppression by the junta is like orchestra, yeah, that like showcase, like just show, not really spreading the scandal, but scandal is still there. For MSFC, we do need support, not militarily, but we go to and then we also have food for the local people. That's is mentioned, yes.
Thank you so much, Naeman Saing. Dr. I'm really
the women perspective. I also have a boy. I'm always constantly have to communicate with him and educate him. It's not to get involved because you never know, because young people, they need more money because technology, they want better life. So you never know. So that's what it put the pressure on the women as well. If we have a children, even though he is the university student, we still have to worry about them, security, to communicate with this. But as the MSFC also part of the member of the NUCC. NUCC also have a scam center task force. So they're trying to gather all the documentation and in along the border and working closely with ER group who are the area in the scam center. So as Science says, so as the MSFC is limited resources, we can do the educate our young people. This is not to get involved. This is the international crimes. So to stay away from it as much as possible. So that is we can do, and we can collaborate that with other NUCC and trying to gather information what is going on in the ground. So it's not just along the border. This is very like a cancer, It's spread out along the country. It's not just along the border. Inside the country, inside the city, in the hotel, they have money, so they have a power. They can control the authority. Not just Myanmar. And then, as you know, the military wonder, their family member, they are part of it. They're beneficially, economically, financially. That's how they buy a gun and they kill people. So they get a lot of benefit from that. So I know the US trying to do their best, and so we are willing to help if they need help. So yes, thank you.
Thank you so much to Naeman Saing and Dr. Anchan. Maggie, I want to add more to that? No? Okay. Thank you. But yes, thank you for answering that question. I know scam centers has become a rising topic, especially in the last 6 months, especially with the response from the US in regards to scam centers because of the significant impact on US citizen. Dr. Achan, you have your hand up. Did you want to add?
Yeah, yes, I would like to add one more thing, because we are going through in the stakeholder engagement meeting. This we try and bring this issue in ASEAN level, not just Myanmar issue, because this is the regional stability and financial crisis in the region. So we're trying to get their voice to solve this problem as well. And as NG also, I'm talking to the Thai academic and then policymaker on how we can collaborate and work together to solve this problem. So yes, I just would like to add a little bit.
Thank you, Dr. Achan. You do bring up a good point that it's not just a Myanmar or Burma issue. It's infecting the region at large. It's impacting victims in other countries. So the response should be as equal, especially as it continues to grow. It's certainly protected by the junta and its affiliates, the militias along the border. It's growing deeper into the countryside or into the country. So it's certainly proliferated. So thank you so much for raising this. I know I wasn't sure if we would actually touch on this with our conversation, but that is like another level of within and along the border. But thank you so much to our speakers. I do want to close out the event with your final thoughts. And this is the same question to all three of you. We'll go next to Dr. Achan, and then Maggie, you'll close us out with the concluding thoughts. So for you all, as we conclude this discussion on Mon State's crisis, what is one urgent action you would call on the international community, policymakers, global leaders to take immediately to support the affected communities within Mon State? And I know you all have touched on it briefly in your talking points, but if you had this opportunity right now to speak directly to them, what would that be? Naimon Saing?
Yes, I want the international community to stop airstrike, to say to the regime to stop airstrike. The airstrike is not hitting the revolutionary force, but hitting civilian. And second, for the accountability of human rights. So now the who committed genocide become chairperson of Miura Ludo, parliament chairman. So accountability is in urgent. Yes.
Thank you, Naimon. Dr. Achan, you're
Okay, I cannot hear. Yeah, your sound is back. Yes. Yeah, I would like to ask the urgent and two priority for international community and to increase the women inequality. Please support the federal unit and capacity to ensuring women are meaningful, including in the decision making now. It's not later. People said, we can. In my experience, I'm going everywhere to attend the meeting. There's just always a 20 men and only like a few women. This is if we want to go further, we need more inclusion for the women to on the table to make the decision. And the second part is the to funding for women, for small business for women, to make them the financial independent, to increase and to help the vulnerable family. Because as we all know, we researcher, right? If we help the women, if the family of the life of the family better and the community will get better. So this is I want to request. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Achan. Maggie?
Yeah, I agree with both of my fellow panelists' points. And I guess I just kind of want to circle back to my introductory point, which is just that the situation is not normal. Nothing that is happening on the ground in Burma right now is normal. That being said, there needs to be a much stronger push for accountability. We know that there's a lot going on in the world right now, and that different countries are in crisis, but Burma has been at war for over 7 decades, and it requires an immediate response. As Dr. Achan said, women need to be at the forefront. There needs to be greater inclusion, funding, and participation for them. But in addition to this, there does need to be targeted sanctions on aviation fuel. People in Burma have been waiting for that ICC referral. So accountability is long overdue, and impunity needs to end. So the international community, ASEAN, global stakeholders need to get organized, and they need to meaningfully engage so that Burma can be federal, but it can also be gender equal and inclusive.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your participation today, joining us, sharing your information, your knowledge, and sharing those calls, those desperately needed calls to the international community. With that said, thank you to our audience. I'm going to hand off to Tuan, one of our staff with USCB. Tuan will close us out today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tuan, and I'm a research intern with U.S. Campaign for Burma. And thank you, Karen, and thank you to our incredible panelists for their powerful insights about the crisis in Mon State, and to our engaged audience for your unwavering support for Burma's cause. And as we close this important conversation on Mon State's escalating crisis, where extortion, forced conscription, and displacement, as well as predatory economies are unraveling lives, we carry forward the human stories, especially for women and vulnerable groups. And as we close, let's also carry forward our panelists' urgent calls for the international community to ramp up targeted sanctions, humanitarian access, and accountability measures to dismantle these systems of exploitation and protect civilians now. And I also urge our audience to share what you've learned and advocate relentlessly and continue to stand with the people of Burma in their fight for justice and peace. And next in our series, we'll turn to Mon State, where remote border communities face total village burnings, aid blockages, and mass flight into India amid some of the most isolated and desperate humanitarian conditions in Burma. And thank you all once again for your passionate engagement. And our panel and audience have made this discussion on Mon State truly impactful. Stay connected as we continue amplifying Burma's crisis. Good day or good night, wherever you are. And thank you all once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Bye.